Hello everyone, my name is Corey Foray, and this is why I think Wizard101 has the best how to defeat racism metaphor in children's media. I don't think YouTube will like me if I name it that, so probably gonna have like a different name, I don't know. So first off, we just have to define racism. I just stole this off of Wikipedia because we all know what racism is. But what's important here is that racism has no scientific basis and is a learned behavior, because children's media is notorious for bad race metaphors, except for Sesame Street. We love you, Sesame Street. Anyways, as we all know, zombies and Zootopia are implying that people of other races want to eat you, and elemental, it's like physical touch can be like harmful, and that's we know that's not true, and it's not the best implications. So yeah, we're gonna talk about Wizard101, as I call it, baby's first MMORPG. It's a children's game that's been running since maybe 2008, 2009. It's about 15 years old, and they're still like regularly releasing content. This matters because once you kind of get past a certain point, you realize no actual child would reasonably make it this far in the game with how like hard some of the battles get. So you can kind of tell the devs like just got to a point where they realized the main audience is adults, but it's still a kids game, so you get some like really wacky lore and the content manifests in just like a really fun way. So kind of once you just get past Arc 3, the writers just have a lot of fun, and it's a whole blast. So here's just proof I've played the game up to this point. This is my wizard, Corey Ravenhunter, Death Wizard. And of course, Corey is where I get the Corey and Corey Foray. Wow, and then I'm just the one in the little arrow. So this is against the final boss of Gobblerton, which is what we're going to be talking about. You don't fight the king, you fight his boogers. Don't worry about it, it's a kid's game. So we're talking about gobblers. Gobblers, I mean, they're exactly what you expect from they look like this, and they're from a kid's game. They eat, they burp, they fart. They're found in Ravenwood and kind of the starting area on Colossus Boulevard, and then in Carmel. And we're mostly talking about Carmel. So the blue card here, the Extracted Gobbler Animus, also lets me say that they're a race because the card exists. Anyways, so Carmel is candy-themed world within the Spiral. Spiral is like all of the worlds, like the galaxy, you could kind of say. And yeah, everything's candy-themed. It's all under Nana. It's like a company world, kind of. And Nana is very comparable to Big Brother from 1984. Because, like, the point of Big Brother in that novel is that, well, he's your big brother. You can tell him anything. He's looking out for you. Whereas Nana is basically, like, capitalism-flavored Big Brother. In that, like, she's the only employer, but, like, she's Nana, guys. Like, she's your grandma. She's just, like, a sweet little old lady who gives you candy. You wouldn't criticize, like, your grandma who gives you chocolate all the time. So everything, that's the kind of vibes, is everything's happy, sugary, sweet. So Caramel, apologies for the black dots in the middle of the red circles. I don't know how I did that. So we're deep late game, and we're in Gobblerton, as I mentioned. Gobblerton's the last area before, like, the final boss. And all the gobblers are basically segregated to Gobblerton because they would eat everything if they weren't, because, again, everything's made of candy. And the blue that's around Gobblerton is an acid soda lake. So they can't really leave, though, like, a few gobblers, like, can and have, but they're kind of just sent back to Gobblerton when they do escape. So that's just that. So Rosina is the kind of main NPC who helps you out at this point. And there's context here that you're not going to have if you haven't played Wizard101, which is that she's an Alfoy. And you're like, hey, oh my gosh, you're an Alfoy. And she's like, no, I'm a gobbler. I don't know what that is. And so Alfoy are like a space-based race found in the previous world, Empira, which is all kind of, think just like Star Trek themed. Basically, they just fly around in space a lot. And a lot of the humor that comes from Rosina's character is her being clueless about, like, things you are already really knowledgeable about. So, like, you say, like, hey, you're an Alpha, and she's like, what? No, I'm not. And there's another point when you're like first crossing the acid soda lake. She's like, "Oh, if only we could breathe underwater." And you're like, "Oh, I can do that." And she's like, "What?" So that's kind of just the humor with her. Just know she's an Alfoy. So you learn that Nana is evil. No way, no way. And she harvests the gobblers wet by kidnapping them and forcing them to run on treadmills. And it's to make anti-joys, which are a chemical produced by gobblers' bodies when they eat candy. And she's using them to make a sour gummy bear army to take over the spiral to increase business. And later you learn there's like a good version called Splendorphins, which reverse the effects of anti-joys. It's a kid's game. Don't worry about it. So here's just screenshots of Gobblerton. They're not great. I'm not good at taking screenshots. A lot of the gobbler names are puns off celebrities. So you can see Gob the Builder in the background there. Carl von Farmer. I think I'm a little too young for that reference. I don't know what it means. Sugar Ray Gobbinson, Gobbert Downey Jr., and Julia Gobberts are a few more. And then also in the little screenshot upper left, you see you do have to fight some gobblers, and they're hungry. Yeah. So Gobblerton is also just kind of, it's a mess. It's falling apart. All the gobblers are really hungry because Nana supplies all the food. So because they're so focused on food, they kind of don't really care about anything else. So everything's a mess. And again, the anti-joys are created by the gobblers eating candy, which perpetually keeps them as gobblers. So the gobblers, they live in an apartheid state. Apartheid, if you don't know, was kind of named in South Africa, and it's like legal racial segregation. And there's still apartheids to this day, for example, Palestine, and the gobblers having no legal access to their own food, no rights. They can't even really like vote in government or anything because it's all run by Nana, and they're permanently segregated to their island. They are in an apartheid state. So Rosina was kicked out of town by the previous king, who she accidentally overthrew for suggesting that the gobblers change their food source. And again, gobblers are that way because when they eat candy, it creates the anti-joys. And that was a theory that she had of like, hey, maybe if we ate healthy food, then that wouldn't happen. And previous king kind of got mad at that, and everyone else just kicked her out of town. So most kids media would like kind of stop here and just be like, hey guys, let's convince the gobblers to exercise and change their diet, and just stop there. And this is inadequate because it would effectively be saying that the gobblers are at fault for their situation and that they could change if they wanted to, even though we know that the gobblers are this way because of things that are massively outside of their control. So, what does Wizard101 do? So you confront King Gobsmack, who's the new king, about the forced labor, and you learn he's getting paid in food for it, and that like if they don't like kidnap people and send them, like they're not gonna get food. And he hoards most of it for himself, so he can just keep all the gobblers like in line. So while King Gobsmack like is himself a gobbler, he directly profits off of the forced labor kidnapping of the gobblers and is incentivized to keep them uneducated about the anti-joys to remain in his position of power, because if the rest of the gobblers found out about the anti-joys and learned how to reverse them, then the gobblers like would not be useful to Nana anymore and she'd stop giving them food. So we can stop Nana's army by educating the gobblers to convince them to exercise and eat healthy instead of like forcing it on them. So slightly before this, you do a bunch of like research quests, and you are able to effectively confirm that the Splendorphins, which are created when you exercise and eat healthy, negate the anti-joys. And so the gobblers' history as Alfoy and the knowledge of their like body's creation of anti-joys is being purposely repressed, just to keep all the gobblers in line with their situation, so they are uneducated. I wanted to mention anti-literacy laws. And so many southern states in America passed anti-literacy laws to prevent the enslaved from kind of breaking out of a slave mentality by being able to learn how to read. Because once you read, you can connect your identity with other people in a way that you might not have before. And this was primarily used for, or against African Americans, I should say. And same with, like, when the civil rights movement was passed, there was a lot of, like, voter tests to make sure that, oh, you have to be literate to be able to vote. But this would stop people from being able to vote because they weren't literate. And they were purposefully made difficult to stop people from voting, primarily African Americans. So it is also like a racial tool. Or a racial tool used against people of a certain racist tool, I should say. That's better. I also wanted to mention food deserts, because they do kind of like partially apply here. A lot of poorer areas basically do not have access to as many like supermarkets and healthy food because of it. A lot more like smaller bodegas, or like a lot of more kind of frozen, super processed food, which kind of increases rates of like obesity and heart disease. And it's not these people's fault, because there's just no healthy food like in their area. And again, this is applying to the gobblers in the sense that they don't have access to healthy food, so they're stuck with the anti-joys. So the gobblers are a representation of an oppressed social group that have no rights, and that they turn into mindless drones with only thoughts of their survival. Yeah, it's not the gobblers' fault that they ended up in this situation. It is the capitalist influences of Nana that drove the gobblers into their current state. So I also wanted to mention poverty, because their gobblers are forced into poverty here, and all they can think about is their next meal, because everything else around them is just like trashed and destroyed. And there are hungry gobblers that you have to fight through, or fight when you're like playing through the game, through Gobblerton, and because of this, it's incredibly reasonable for the gobblers to want to escape and eat everything in Caramel, which is like the reason that they're segregated there in the first place. So you storm the castle archives, and you find an old like ship record from the Alfoy ship that like first crash landed. Again, Alfoy, space, Star Trek kind of based. They crashed their ship, and the ship log is basically like, hey guys, we crashed our ship, but we did find a world made of candy. Oh my god, candy. And I just want to point out this quote here. Gobblers really used to be great thinkers and makers. Truth be told, I've always had this voice inside of me telling me to build things. Again, this shows the gobblers would be a lot more successful under different circumstances. So you help by planting veggies and fruit trees, getting them access to healthy food. You help rebuild a bunch of things, and you preach to the people about their history. I wanted to bring up these two quotes here. Gobble Wormtongue being like, no, don't rebuild the factory. The king's gonna be mad. And then Rosina's quote here. Remember this feeling, it's called living. Let us vow to hang on to it, to never lose it to kings or candy or cravings again. I love it. So mutual aid. Remember, if your government of an old lady who runs a whole candy store, Candy World, won't help your community because she profits off of you guys being uneducated and poor and only eating candy, so she could kidnap you to harvest your sweat to make an evil gummy bear army. Like, if she's not going to help you, then, you can help your community instead. So you overthrow King Gobsmack. It's not enough. Because again, he's being paid to oppress the gobblers and to continue the forced labor. Like, anyone could kind of just take his place and things could go back to what they were previously. Whoa, Nana, profiting off the suffering of the lower classes. No way, Nana's evil? No way. Again, this is the last area before the final boss, which, yeah, it's Nana. Who would have thought? And so I just wanted to point out the quote here, ready to go punch Nana right in the bank account. If you want to threaten capitalists, threaten their profit incentive, make their bank account hurt, because then they're going to care. So how do we solve racism according to Wizard101? Of course, being anti-racist. A lot of like children's media, very specifically like younger children's media, will focus on racism in the sense of we solve racism by being nice to people, which individually is like a good message, but it's not going to solve racism. So just wanted to bring that up. It does nothing like systemically, just individually. Class solidarity, don't turn your back on people because they are because of money and stuff. A push for educational and literacy efforts. Again, gobblers, when they learned about their history, they're able to be inspired to rebuild everything. Volunteering in your community, mutual aid, and most importantly, overthrow the system and beat up old people. Thank you so much for watching. This is my first video. Feel free to leave any criticism and stuff in the comments. I've had to re-record this like 4 times. Um, like, subscribe. I don't know, hit the buttons. Thank you so much for watching.